Being socially awkward, being a person who is generally mentally unstable and emotionally unstable, I would say, you know, in a lot of ways, I am undeveloped as a person because of my condition. But oftentimes, when you have these conditions or mental illnesses, you tend to analyze and you tend to be able to understand and discern things that perhaps the normal person can't discern. You know, I was never really a fan of Michael Jackson, at least not from his um, days as being a pop singer. Of course, he was the greatest pop singer of all time, but I don't care about that. You know, I'm not going to talk about Michael Jackson, the king of pop. I'm going to talk about Michael Jackson, the human being. Now, throughout the years, right before Michael Jackson's timely death, all the controversy that he would get into, all the media attention, all the negative press that he would always get. I remember that one time, like in the early 90s, they kept asking Michael Jackson, was he gay because, he never really approached women or he never really had too much desire to engage into a relationship. I mean, seriously, these people had no understanding of who Michael Jackson was. I didn't even know Michael Jackson personally, and just by looking and observing him on the TV screen, how the way he acts, and reading about storylines about him, I understand Michael Jackson. I understand why he was the way he was. And when I think about, how people used to kind of just like, criticize him, the press used to always, be on his case and accuse him that child molestation just pissed me off because they did not understand this man. Michael Jackson was a very troubled individual. And I'm not saying that to be cruel or to put him down. You understand? Reading about Michael Jackson's early childhoods, before he went on the road to become, a major singer star, of course, his father was very abusive. Father used to beat his mother, he would force Michael and his brothers to where they would practice, so they can become, great and successful. Michael Jackson never had a proper childhood. Because of all that abuse, Michael Jackson used to isolate himself, not just from his father or his brothers and sisters. I mean, he was somewhat close to his mother, but, in a lot of cases, he would even isolate himself from her because Michael Jackson, he had more like that kind of artistic, sort of avoidant, sort of personality predisposition to where he felt just absolutely helpless. He didn't connect with his family. So he would often isolate himself with his family. I mean, he befriended a rat. I mean, the rat wasn't his pet. The rat was his friend. Of course, his father ended up killing the rat and made him very upset. But, not before when they start performing and ultimately they performed for years and they became very successful as Jackson 5, which eventually Michael Jackson would become a single success. Of course, Michael Jackson did not have a proper childhood. Michael Jackson genuinely was not a normal child, perhaps regardless of whether the situation. I mean, the abuse that he dealt with, the isolation. I mean, even beforehand, Michael Jackson did not have proper development as an adult. I mean, Michael Jackson, through all his years, he never really was a completely developed adult. He was always a child. You understand? With the situation with the whole Neverland Land Ranch and all the playthings, he wanted to re-experience his childhood. He wanted to be connected to that. He lost that. And Michael Jackson never got the chance to, you know, to really go out and enjoy things once he became famous, once he was independent, separated from his father. When he wanted to go to the movies, he couldn't go to the movies because every time he would get bombarded by random fans. He couldn't go anywhere without being harassed by people. And that drove the man nuts, which eventually, you know, he just isolated himself again. He ended up isolating himself at his house at his Neverland Ranch, completely away from people. And this when he began to invite young boys, you know, all around the world to befriend him. Of course, this would eventually lead to the whole controversy of Michael Jackson being accused of child molestation. Let me tell you this. If you understood Michael Jackson, if you understood his state of mind, you would know for a fact that Michael Jackson never had any ill, inappropriate, selfish, sadistic desires to harm those young children in any way. He was not a child molester. He was not a predator. Michael Jackson was always a child at heart. Even, you know, Michael Jackson was still a boy. Even though you heard when he talked how his voice would be very, you know, lay tone or sensitive. You know, it's like he never really got to where he was developed proper adulthood because of the circumstance. You know, once he got away from his father and he was independent, but you know, the fame, everything, you know, the fame was a curse. He couldn't go anywhere without being bombarded by the press. You know, the press kept trying to make bad tabloids about Michael Jackson, saying, "Michael Jackson, are you gay? And are you, you know, why are you still a virgin?" This is a very socially awkward man. This man really didn't have any real sexual interest with females the way his brothers did because he was not particularly properly developed. He did, but Michael Jackson ultimately was a child at heart. He was never, in any case, a homosexual. I mean, if he was a virgin, you know, at the late age as he was, that was a good thing. Because you're not supposed to have sex until you get married. Anyway, the situation with Michael Jackson and, you know, and the young boys, you know, when he dealing with that court case, people thought, well, why does Michael Jackson have all the company to these young boys in his room? They're locked in the same room. You know, that I suppose in some cases because Michael Jackson was an adult, it was inappropriate from that perspective. But if you understood Mike, you understand his mindset, you would know that according to his mindset, it was almost like he was innocent of these relationships because Michael Jackson was a child at heart. Michael Jackson had befriended these young boys, in particular invited them, because Michael Jackson connected with these children. These children did not treat him like he was Michael Jackson, the king of pop. They treated him like he was a person. And Michael Jackson was a child at heart. He was still very much a little boy. And you know, he did not identify with adults. I mean, no one really understood Michael Jackson. Except, I mean, children. I mean, he never really found any peace or any connection with people, you know, unless it was children. Because he was a child at heart. And the fact of the matter is, Michael Jackson, he never recovered from that situation with the court day. When he was accused of child molestation, he was not allowed to be around children anymore. I mean, that literally broke his heart. That crushed him, which I believe kind of led to his untimely death. And, you know, I just hate it when, you know, people just make these comments and opinions and, you know, they're associating this innocent man, this man with no predatory intentions towards children, and they are associating him with the same mentality as a sociopathic, sadistic child molester. Someone who completely disregards children, as human beings, and they will abuse them for their own sadistic desires. That was not Michael. Michael had, when was nothing, anything like that. Michael Jackson loved children. Michael Jackson was a child of the house. He only felt peaceful around children because he was a child. He had no inappropriate intentions. Maybe he being a grown man situated, his children in his bedroom, that might have been inappropriate, but the fact that Michael Jackson's mindset was in that of a state of a child, it basically like it was innocent. I mean, I'm not even a fucking psychologist and I can explain and understand Michael's state of mind. Fuck. Guess that's a gift, having all these fucking mental disorders. I mean, people, they were such on the case on Michael Jackson because of his fame, you know, because of his success. And people never really treated... And, you know, people never really treated Michael or really understood Michael as Michael Jackson, the human being. I mean, Michael Jackson, of course, he did have an adult side. You know, he did have the capacity to be adult-like. You know, I mean, he did develop a certain level of people's skills after a while. I mean, the guy had married Elvis Presley's daughter, you know. But, of course, it ended up in divorce because, you know, Michael Jackson didn't really focus on her. I mean... After the trial, you know, when Michael Jackson had, you know, survived that, of course, he became isolated for 10 years until that one particular, what was it, in late 2008, Michael Jackson had announced that he was going to have one last tour. And I knew several months before that Michael Jackson was going to pass away. This is like at the closing of 2008. I just knew Michael Jackson was about to die. I don't know how, but I just knew. I mean, I felt so sorry for Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson was, you know, like often put in this situation and often abused, and people never understood the man. That's why he befriended children. Because children understood him.